Hello, beautiful community. The tyrant in the Kremlin's plan to use the most independent of his controlled opposition parties as a spoiler in the September elections just collapsed and has had to ban this party. So I want to give us an analysis today in the form of something I've pre-written for us, and there's going to be a benefit here, not just because a small percentage of you would like to read this, but also because the majority of you will get this analysis in about 7 or 8 minutes rather than in 25, which would happen if I just spoke, especially in my current state of health. So let's rock and roll and figure out what's happened, beautiful community. So consider this a minor initiation into regime dynamics in a kind of hyper-neoliberal, monarchist and fascistized autocracy. The story under analysis is this. And I'm going to read, you're going to be okay with that. You're going to forgive me for reading because it's going to get us there quicker today. Having initially allowed it to run, Putin just barred the most independent of the controlled opposition parties, Yabloko, Apple, from taking part in the September parliamentary elections. For the regime, Yabloko functioned as a spoiler. It was largely compromised, partly independent, but insofar it was independent, it was depleted. Putin's initial plan was to extract two benefits and avoid one cost. The benefits were first, an aura of legitimacy bestowed on the parliamentary elections, and second, to trigger conflict within Russia's exiled opposition. In particular, conflict between the Khodorkovsky and the Navalny groups about whether endorsing Yabloko benefited or harmed Putin. And the cost to be avoided was Yabloko reaching 5%, that 5% threshold which would gain them parliamentary seats. And this plan simply fell apart. First, Yabloko's anti-war but not anti-Putin message surged on social media platforms. Yabloko, without doing that much, gave the population a bit of an informational breather from the nihilism of state propaganda and reminded them that they were a bit less deranged than the regime needs them to be. Katerina Schulman noted that there was a tiny online poll in Chekhov, which is a bit of Moscow Oblast, that gave Yabloko 32% of the vote and United Russia, the party of the day, only 10%. Now, you can't read it into that too much, but it has a stark significance about the trend that Yabloko was on. It was no longer clear to the regime that it could keep Yabloko under that 5% threshold. Now, don't forget, Putin still has nightmarish memories of outsiders getting about that kind of number in the vote in 2013, and he doesn't want this repeated. Now, that year, there were two outsiders who broke through and changed Russia's political landscape. There was Mr. Navalny, who ran for mayor of Moscow and got 27% of the vote, and Putin's mayor, Mr. Sobyanin, got 51% and only narrowly avoided a runoff. And that really helped launch Mr. Navalny's opposition to Mr. Putin. And then on the same day, Mr. Roizman ran for mayor of Yekaterinburg and got over 30% of the vote and actually won against the Kremlin candidate. Putin doesn't want any semblance of this kind of thing at all. Second, Russia's exiled opposition unified around endorsing Yabloko. Navalny's group set aside 2 decades of hostility toward Yabloko and endorsed Yabloko as a pragmatic anti-war vote. Khodorkovsky's group also offered an endorsement and were joined by Mr. Karamurza and Mr. Yashin, and Maxim Katz also joined but warned that endorsing Yabloko too early might give the Kremlin time to kick them off the ballot, which is what happened. All this proved too edgy for Putin. Rodina, a political party that's an instrument of Putin's, appealed to the Supreme Court, another instrument of Putin's, to have Yabloko barred from the election. And the maneuver was rapid, and the reasons were so ludicrous that the presiding judge struggled to keep a straight face. Rodina argued that Jablonko's logo plagiarized a poster from 1920 because it contained circles and triangles like that poster did. They also argued that Mr. Yavlinsky, the founder of the party, infringed the copyright of a Soviet song when he said, "Let there be sunshine." They also claimed that Jablonko infringed the copyright of the US Army, which doesn't exist under American law, by using a photo of Hiroshima. And they also argued that Jablonko used a still from a 1960s Soviet film adaptation of War and Peace without having the rights to it. Then, during the hearing, the Central Election Commission accused Jablonko of taking foreign funds. In practice, this involved donations inside Russia from Russian citizens who themselves received some funds from abroad. And it also involved a transaction of 16.9 thousand rubles, about 205 US bucks, from Belarus. So, a complete farce. And so this story was sort of concocted on the run because they had a plan and then they saw their plan getting out of control. And so they needed to ban this party. What's next? Well, Putin needs to decide if Jablonko is still to any extent functionally beneficial to him, and if not, destroy it. Two of Jablonko's leading figures, Mr. Schlossberg and Mr. Kruglov, are already in jail. The remaining political space for Jablonko to operate will be further constricted or asphyxiated. This is Russia's latest totalitarian turn, and many more will follow. Catch you soon, beautiful community.